everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Armchair Crew Chief. My name is Jordan, and I thank you for tuning in on this fine week that we are having here. So let's go ahead and dive into everything. This past weekend, we had racing at Martinsville. We had trucks, Xfinity, and Cup. It was very interesting because so they were supposed to be doing qualifying or practice at least, and everything kind of got pushed aside because of the rain. So again, trucks actually started out on wet weather tires, first time on an oval that NASCAR was able to use their package for wet weather tires. And from the little bit of racing that I saw, it looked pretty interesting. Kyle Busch was running up front on that race for the most part until they pulled everybody in. I think that was 25 laps or so, and told them, hey, we're going back to slicks. Once that happened, Corey Heim actually was able to get back into everything. He ended up sweeping the stages and the race. We did have some boneheaded moves happen towards the end. And when I say boneheaded moves, I'm talking Carson Hocevar did a pretty boneheaded move. It looked like he tried to wreck Tanner Gray. I think it was Tanner Gray, one of the Grays. And just looking at it, they parked him for two laps. And it just, that reminded me of kind of like what Bubba Wallace did last year and so on, and a few other guys. So, I think that was pretty dumb on his. I mean, he came off a win in Texas. He did well. Why? I don't know. It's just one of those silly things on being a bonehead and being young. Who knows what will happen with that? I think he should get a little bit more of a punishment, whether it be from his team or not. You just can't do that. And some people will look at it and you'll say, well, he didn't have. When you go back and look at everything, he lost one of his rear tires, but he was going down before that tire fully went out and made him lose control, if you ask me. So, I don't like it. I think that was really stupid on his part. But anyway, moving on, we had Corey Heim mentioned Kyle Busch finished second. They had a good back and forth, even though Heim ended up finishing with a 1.2 second lead over Kyle Busch. Zane Smith still running hot. He finished third. Ty Majeski fourth. Tanner Gray ended up getting fifth place, so he didn't get too messed up from that. Taylor eighth, Matty D seventh, Ben Rhodes sixth. A couple of the people that we follow on this podcast, they didn't fare so well this race. Haley Deegan 20th and Rajah Caruth 25th. I mean, you still think about it. Rajah finishing before Matt Crafton, a multi-time champion of this of the Craftsman trucks. He did pretty good. I think he's overperforming expectations for what has happened. So, good for him. So moving over into Xfinity, John Hunter Nemechek had the car to beat. It was just, it was really good. He was out there most of the race. Some people would come up and catch him, but he pretty much ran everything. Sammy Smith, Cole Custer were battling. Those were the two guys that were up there. They actually finished. Those guys finished 1, 2, and 3. John Hunter, Sammy, and Cole Custer. Junior Motorsports seemed to have a little bit of a hiccup here, but then they, Josh Berry came back, Brandon Jones came back, and they did well. So going forward, John Hunter did win the Dash for Cash, as we've been talking about that as well. So he's got the 100K. He ended up lighting his car on fire as he celebrated, just sitting there. Again, they have the little, I guess you could call them a splash guard. They look like a mud flap with holes in them. So splash guard that caught a lot of rubber and pretty much caught his car on fire. And it was kind of ironic because his main sponsor this weekend was the it was a fire extinguisher company. So he ended up he's like, hey, even the fire extinguishers are running and putting out their car. So it was kind of funny, it wasn't really planned, but it worked out well to get more time. Allgaier finished 7th. So JRM did recovered and finished fairly strong. You have your 8, 9, 7 cars there. Hemrick finished 7th. Ryan Truex finished 12th. He had a little bit of a run-in with who I'm trying to remember the person's name, Sam Mayer. He had a run-in with him. They were kind of beating and banging, bouncing. Sam Mayer ended up telling him that he was number one, if you know what I mean. And it was, I don't know if it was so much like Truex's fault. Truex did get into a little bit of a beating and banging with another guy, but it looked like it was just really racing. It wasn't so much like a Hocevar thing where they were kind of beating, bang, and then Tanner came up on Hocevar, and then Hocevar just decided to drive down. It wasn't any of that. It seemed more like a race. So that's pretty much a quick recap on the Xfinity race. The Cup race, going back to Xfinity real quick, we have Cole Custer, Josh Berry, Sammy Smith, and John Hunter going for the Dash to Cash this weekend. So we'll see who'd be able to take that one away as well. So going back to the Cup, so Chase Elliott is back. That is the big news this past week is Chase Elliott, he didn't have a crutch on, nothing. He was just walking. We did the Group A and Group B practice and qualifying. I don't really like that. We'll kind of go back into that a little bit more. Ryan Preece got his first career pole, so congratulations to him. Stuart Haas had a really strong showing in qualifying that it was great for them. Daniel Suarez finished second. First cause for caution, as we call it, because they did run stage 1 clean. Everything worked out. Truex's car was horrible. There's a couple other guys that, from what the TV broadcast was saying, is they were setting up for the track to tighten up, and it never did to that point. We had Burton speed. Ryan Preece got caught speeding. Harrison Burton spun, and coming out of pit road, Ryan Preece, our leader, who he pretty much led every lap to that point, he got caught speeding. Martin Truex Jr. got caught speeding in Bubba Wallace, so they all started from the back. And with the exception of Bubba and Martin, they actually had a strong finishing towards the end of the race, but it was tough for them to get back. They weren't even up in the picture until like 20, 30 laps to go. So it was something else. It was frustrating to watch that part. I know a few other people had some complaints about the qualifying kind of was, or not qualifying, passing with these Cup cars and the package. I think Denny even brought it out. It's like, hey, we used to have a stat on green flag passes. Nobody's talked about that in a while. So where did that go? And that's a big thing that popped up. Corey LaJoie was doing well. He kind of went back and forth. He got it in with Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch got into him. I think this was a little bit of Kyle Busch getting frustrated and taking it out on somebody else. It's Corey LaJoie. He's a lower team still, so to speak. So why not take your frustration out on him? You could argue, but at the same time, shouldn't have been doing that. Kind of just beating, banging. It was pretty boring of a race for the most part because the guys that were out front, you didn't have a lot of. You sit there and watch, and some of your guys on the outer edge, you could see them kind of whichever lane they were in, moving back and forth, just shuffling places. It wasn't so much of a, man, this guy was hot and he just ran through. It turned out to be only one aspect of your racing that you planned for helped you out, and that was, pit stops. Towards the end of the race, yeah, we had some people passing in the back, but in my opinion, it was still slightly. It wasn't enough fun up front, if you ask me, because these guys like drove away with the race. Kyle Larson, again, he's, as I was saying, he kind of took advantage of the whole pit strategy and pitting type thing that happened with Truex as well, where he ended up he lucked out because they were hanging out, and they got a late caution on their last pit that allowed them to come in and pit under caution instead of green flag. So that kind of worked out for them. I still think Xfinity is having more racing, whether it's people banging and banging or what. I still stand. Well, let's go ahead and cover who finished the race, and I'll keep going in on my opinions on everything. Kyle Larson finished first, Logano second. As I said, Truex made a good run up front. He finished third. Denny, he kind of came back. And then Chase Briscoe, Almirola, and Blaney he had a fairly strong running. I mean, Fords did fairly well, I think, at the beginning of the race. Ricky Stenhouse, Bubba, and Chase Elliott. That's your top 10 for the race. The people that led laps, you had a few people like Keselowski led a few laps. Kevin Harvick led a few laps. Suarez led some laps as well. And then you had your guys up front. I think Denny did lead some laps as well. He led some. Chase Briscoe had the most laps led. Kyle Larson obviously he won, so he had to at least lead one lap. Joe Logano led some laps, but it wasn't. I mean, besides those guys, Priest led the most laps at 135, and as I said, I think he might have won this race. I don't know, or Larson and Priest might have had a good battle, so to speak, up front towards the end if he didn't get caught speeding. So, it'd be interesting to see that. I don't know what'll happen going forward with that. We'll see. So, Anthony Alfredo lost a tire during pit stops. There's one of those things, and he actually lost it. Not like them punishing Eric Almirola because his hub, the rim broke around the hub, and they said, "Oh, your wheel fell off. You need to get penalized for that," which was completely, utterly stupid on NASCAR's part. One of my things, so we'll go into my points that I took away that just kind of hammer down some more on this race that I didn't like. I'm not a big fan of this Group A and B practice. Let everybody go out like we used to do before 2020. Then let's just go through and qualify all together. Top 10 go and not. And the reason I say that is because a lot of these guys in Group A, they're sitting there and, they could be sixth because it's top 5 on each group advance on. They could be 6th, 7th, or 8th, and they're faster than everybody in Group B, yet they have to start 11th, 12th, so on. And that's pretty silly in my opinion. I like to see them go back to everybody, the whole field run, and then we have our top 15 or whatever, top 10, top 5, keep going. Do the 3-stage qualifying that they did in 2019 and do it that way. Or let's go back really old and you qualify where you qualify. There's no group or stage qualifications. I think the whole, Group A and B practice and then qualifying is just ridiculous. I think we should maybe go back to one more day qualifying. Some of these guys will complain and say, I love it like this because this means that we don't have to rush to get to the track and do a lot more practicing. But then your car stinks or it rains out and you're out of luck. So that's mine to that. That's my rebuttal to that, so to speak. Same thing some of these guys have said. We work weekends long, hard. It's like, yeah, I understand that. And I feel for you for an extent, but this is also the life you chose. And hey, I'd love to do it for a little while too, but I'm not in there. So, that's kind of just a side rant. on some of that. But hey, these guys working hard on the weekends. They go home. They work kind of like we do, not 9 to 5, but they're home and going into the garage, getting ready, prep for next weekend. They have it tough, and then they have a few months off. It's kind of, that's the joy of sports. That's why they get paid more money than we do to work. So, and I know somebody will come up and say, no, they don't really do that, but I know some of these guys do. But anyway, moving forward, another one of my frustrations is James Small. That dude's got to go. He's been Truex's pit crew chief since Cole Pern left in 21, I believe it was. 2020. And man, they haven't been able really to rattle anything off consistent. He got a few wins back. I think 2020 he got a win or two. 21 he got a few wins. I think one, but then it's been kind of falling off. He might have had more than that in 21. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Anyway, just a point of frustration that you hear. He goes and asks Truex, what do you need? He's like, I've already told you what I need. Can you do this? And then they go and they like, oh yeah, we put everything back. He's like, why the F did you put things back? I didn't like it that way. And so, it's just, I feel like they're throwing pasta at the wall to see what sticks. And I know for an extent you have to do that, but you have to also go back on the feedback of your driver. And you're getting SMI data back from the car too. So you got to have somebody looking at that and be able to, put your head together fairly quick and come up with a plan. And, it was one of those things that was like, hey, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? It seems like he also didn't want to talk to Truex sometimes, and he would talk in between Drew Herring, his crew chief, and go through that point too. So I don't know. It's frustrating. I think he's either going to go or Truex is going to go. Truex is going to retire, which I hope he doesn't. I think he's got one more in him, or Truex is going to go to another team, because this is getting really frustrating, really silly. So we'll see what happens with that. Again, if you haven't picked up listening to these podcasts, me and my family, we are big time Truex fans. And just to see this happen is very frustrating. We like Corey LaJoie. We like a lot of drivers. There's people that we don't like. Let's put it that way. There's people we really like. There's people we don't like. So we're kind of equal opportunity for a lot of people. I wonder what would happen with Kyle Larson if there was more laps to go with Joey Logano and with a Martin Truex coming up from behind. I don't know if he would have been able to stay on him or not. Who knows? Going back to a Martinsville race, I remember hearing just recently, Dale Jr., he came out and said, he's like, we got to take shifting away from these. They should not be shifting on ovals. This is just silly. And this is from the product of the new car and the 5-speed transmission. You're not going to sit there and go through the turn in fifth gear because you're going to, bog out of the turn with the low RPMs, and you're going to get blown out of the water. And the same thing with, probably the fourth gear. I don't know what the gearing is compared to the old car. It's got to be somewhat different. But anyway, that was something big that's different. J.J. Yaley blew an engine, unfortunately for him, in this race. So, let's see what happens. This next week, we are going to be at Talladega. And so, sorry guys for the quick break there. So, Talladega Super Speedway, we'll see what happens there. There's a big difference between these smaller tracks and the luck that you can get, so to speak, on how this all happens. So, we'll go through there. I think it'll be a fun race. I know a lot of people don't like the super speedways because they're big, huge, and it's slow. I don't know. Hopefully there's going to be some passing through there. It's hard to tell. It's super speedway racing. I know some people that are like, hey, on these cars, and take the restrictor plates off of them, let them run wide open, or run as comfortable as they feel. So, hey, that's something that we'll see what happens going forward. Other news, let's see. Another one of those annoying things I don't like about these races. It wasn't so much. It did happen a little bit on the Cup Series, but I think it stuck out on the Xfinity race, and it does a lot. And then same thing with the truck race. I think to a certain point they need to stop counting yellow flag laps. And I think this was when I think this was in the Xfinity race. They threw the yellow flag. They went 11 laps on caution, and then only had 7 left on the race. So they were like, they were up there almost nearing the end of the stage. And then next thing you know, something happens, and you waste half of what you had left on yellow flag. And I think that makes it dull and boring whenever you're like, oh, we're going to have 2 laps left. And it does, some people will push, some people won't. I think it just takes away because you sit there and you're watching the cars go around at pit roads, a little faster than pit road speed. And that's not what you pay for. That's not what you want to see. You want to see these guys go full out running and racing. And I get you're going to have cautions and you're going to have to go around a little bit slow. But towards the end of the stage, or you're getting close to a stage break or the end, stop counting them. 10 laps, something like that. Give 15 laps, depending on the track. So just so they can get a rhythm going and get some interesting stuff moving along. So, hey, that's another thing. One of the other big things that just recently came out, as we had mentioned before, Justin Haley had his second appeal process, or they were moving up to the second appeal. That ended up being granted, and they came back and gave him back his driver points and his owner points, and kept the $100,000 fine, as well as kept the 4-race suspension. And I think that's how it should be, especially after that's what was given to Hendrick Motorsports after their appeal. It was, this wasn't NASCAR, this was the appeals panel, but it shows that there could have been a blatant favoritism towards the larger team. I'm not going to say just Hendrick. I'm starting to lean towards, there's some kind of buddy with Hendrick and NASCAR. And I'm not even talking about like Garage 56, but just in general, you go for these larger teams and you're going to give them leeway, but you're going to throw the book at the smaller teams. No, that's not cool. That's starting to look like a Major League Baseball and so on, who find out other teams are cheating, and next thing you know, that's okay unless you're a smaller market team. I think they just wanted a scapegoat for what happened, and so they chose Kaulig, and then NASCAR came out and expressed their disappointment with the Hendrick appeal. Then next thing you know, they throw the book at Kaulig, and I think that was unprofessional in my opinion on this appeals panel. And I know they're separate people. The people that heard the appeal for Hendrick didn't hear the appeal for Kaulig. But if you're an appeals panel, you kind of have to have somewhat of a similar thought process, or give a really darn good reason on why they weren't. So, anyway, so we're going to be switching gears. Switching gears here. So we have NASCAR's been doing this top 75 greatest drivers, and in keeping in tune with the 75th anniversary of NASCAR as a sport. So we have some people coming in. We have the original 50 people like Bobby Allison, Davey Allison. These are all in alphabetical order. Neil Bonnet, just to name. I'm just naming a few. Dale Sr., Ralph, Bill Elliott, Ralph Earnhardt, AJ Foyt, Harry Gant, Jeff Gordon, Ray Hendrick, Dale Jarrett, Ernie Irvan, Ned Jarrett, Junior Johnson, Alan Kwiecki, Terry Labonte, Mark Martin, Benny Parsons, David Pearson, Richard Petty, Lee Petty, Ricky Rudd, Fireball Roberts, Rusty Wallace, Darrell Waltrip, Joe Weatherly, Bob Wellborn, Rex White, Glenn Wood, Kel Yarborough, just to name a few of the top 50. So every week I don't think there's any rhyme or reason, but they've been releasing additions onto that top 75. So we have, I mean, obviously the math to do. We have 25 drivers that are kind of, I mean, you could argue modern day drivers. I don't know. They're not really, because a couple of these guys aren't modern day drivers, but a couple of guys that came out recently: Sterling Marlin, Greg Biffle, Kyle Larson was named a while back, Randy LaJoie named last week, Mike Stefanik, Casey Kane, and Tony Stewart. Those are going to be the add-ons to this top 75. We'll see who else comes out. There's been some speculation on who they would have there and who they wouldn't. You know, it's really up for debate on that. So anyway, that's pretty much what we got going on. Now we're going to turn our eyes and attention over to Talladega. And so we have the Geico 500, 3 Eastern. So we're probably dropping the green flag probably about 3:30-ish, unless they move it up because of weather. Saturday, 4 o'clock Eastern is the Ag Pro 300. And then Craftsman Trucks will be running. They're not going to be running this week. They're going to be running a while. May 6th is their next race, so we won't be talking about them for a little while. But Xfinity and Cup Race are going to be coming up Talladega and running. So we'll talk about that next week, and hope you guys have a good rest of your week and enjoy it. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share this podcast if you find interesting. If you guys find anything you want to talk about, don't hesitate to message me, leave a comment. We'll figure it out. And again, thanks guys for listening, and have a good one.